Welcome back. This may look a little goofy, but that's whatever. So, what I have noticed over the past couple of months, honestly, over the past couple of years, is that there is a growing resentment towards music streaming. In particular, the splits that artists get for the amount of streams that they do. And I kind of wanted to break it down a little bit because I know that Lil Yachty and James Blake, either one of them, has made a big discussion point about it. And I just saw as well that Metro Boomin just stated that this next album may possibly be the last album on streaming. Whether that holds any kind of truth to it, I'm not totally sure. But that's why I wanted to talk about it today. So let's look at some of the bigger streaming platforms, including one that I find actually incredibly interesting. So Spotify is the one that I use. It's probably the most popular one out there. You get 0.003 to 0.005 per stream. So that is less than a cent. So Spotify's numbers are the biggest ones that are going to stand out because it is the most common and most popularly used streaming service. And for $11.99, this is all Canadian, by the way. For $11.99, you would really think that a good amount of that number could honestly go to artists. So that way the splits work out better. So I totally understand why the issue with the splits is a big problem, especially with Spotify, because if you're paying $12 a month, you would at least think that a good amount of it could go to the artist, especially for making the platform as big as you are. But to continue going down, so Apple Music is the cheapest streaming service here at $5.99. But you still get that 0.05, 0.07 kind of split. So still under less than a cent. $5.99 for a service is fantastic, but that definitely makes the issue of the splits incredibly difficult unless you're going to have to raise the premium of the price, which honestly may become a reality faster than you think. So Tidal, I actually used Tidal for a good amount of time, mostly because Tidal was very artist-centric and focused on making sure that artists got paid their premiums. And Tidal does that. It actually is one of the few streaming services that pays about a cent a stream, which is a big difference. And I remember when I was using Spotify, if you wanted to pay further up into your monthly fee, you could actually, your top artist that you're listening to in that month actually gets a 10% kind of your streams, or a 10% kind of almost raise in a way. So Tidal is very artist centric, and not to mention, Tidal has some great audio features. When I was using, though, the Tidal is a little buggy, so I think there needs to be a little bit of kinks worked out. But it is one of the more expensive ones at $14.99, and especially if you go up higher into the tiers, you're getting to $20 a month just for a personal plan, which is rather expensive, but I mean, it's not absolutely terrible. Now, I put Napster on here because Napster, I remember, back in the late 2000s, was a pirated music streaming service. So you could download a bunch of stuff, download it for free. There was a big controversy, especially I remember Metallica and Lars, the drummer of that, was pushing heavily against Napster. But now, if you really look at it, it pays the most. So it's over a cent, close to it, and then it goes into 2 cents almost, and you get $10.99 for the service. So Napster may honestly be a good alternative. It gives the artists the amount of premiums that kind of go up a little bit more, and it's only $10.99 to service. It's honestly not that bad. But the reason why I wanted to talk about this is that physical album sales are starting to increase again. And from an article that I read, I'm going to be posting all the links to the articles in the description down below, especially the ones that talk about the streaming splits, as well as these ones here. But CDs saw a 10.9% increase in sales, and that was the first increase in 20 years. So if you think about it, 2004, that's when I believe high-speed internet was starting to become a little bit more of a common thing. And it was definitely a lot more of hands-on of the internet, and people were taking the internet on by storm. So that kind of makes sense. And then vinyls saw an increase of 17.8%. I've known this for a little bit, that vinyl has increased in its sales. There's a lot of music collecting going on. There's a lot of people that really idolize and really like the feeling of physical media. I myself have over 100 records, so I understand. CDs I'm not a big fan of, but CDs are starting to become a lot more prevalent over the past few years. And you're starting to see it a lot now, especially with vinyl bundles, exclusive colors, exclusive songs on said vinyls, on said CDs. There is this start to incentivize physical media. So, do we see a return of physical media in general? Does it overcome streaming? No. The ease of use of streaming services, the way that you have an access to an unlimited library of music, it's going to be very hard to see physical media return. One big example I can think of is that I used to, my Walmart that's right in my town, I used to buy all my CDs there. I bought Dawn FM, I bought the Wu-Tang Clan album, I bought a couple Coldplay albums. Just last year, they took out all of the CDs and all the physical media. It was completely gone. The first time that I saw physical media in the store was when the Tortured Poets department came out and there was actual vinyl and CD sets. So the big push for physical media, it's going to take a while if that was to happen. It's going to have a very big uphill climb because with all these streaming services, the way that it's so easy to use, the way that it's not limits, but it really allows for unlimited access to whatever music you want, unlimited recommendations, not to mention some have audiobooks, not to mention some of them have podcasts. The way to have basically a control center to have everything that you want at your fingertips, especially for a monthly fee, from about 10 like $6 to $15, like for especially a younger audience and younger consumer base, they're definitely going to lean to more towards having everything kind of brought to them. Now, with that being said, I feel like these are going to have to go up in order for premiums to increase for artists. For paying $12 to get this kind of split, I can honestly understand why artists are upset. You can definitely get a lot more out of it. $5.99, it's a great price for the service, but even just raising it to $8 or $7, you probably would see a better split. Tidal and Napster are kind of ahead of the pack when it comes to the artist-centric music platform, pushing more towards streams, incentivizing the person to care about the artist. But let's be honest, the general public is not really focused on the numbers game like this and focused on the artist getting paid, because we probably assume that artists are getting paid quite a bit already. And for the artists that make a major amount of monthly listeners, this is fine to them. But let's say, for example, I am an up-and-coming artist that I've still working a part-time job, but I'm still trying to get my music off the ground. Even if I'm at like 40 to 50,000 monthly listeners, in comparison with the 0.3 to 0.5, I'm not making anything. And that's a really tough thing to do, especially if you're trying to being an up-and-coming artist. The internet, while still being a major tool of growing your music and growing your popularity and growing your fan base, the money doesn't really reflect that sometimes. So as an artist, especially trying to start off, all of these numbers seem incredibly low. And I think what you're going to have to do is you're going to have a coalition of artists that really push for an increase in those premiums, in those splits for the artists in order to kind of mend the gap between the two. So that way the consumer gets the best product possible with the cheapest alternative possible, while the artist still gets a healthy amount of compensation for their work. Because let's be honest, these Spotify's, Apple Music titles, they'd be nothing, obviously, without the artist. So you need the artist to contribute to your platform to make it as successful as it is. Now, is there a possibility of an alternative streaming service? I mean, there is a couple, obviously, that we stated here, but I think you're like what Jay-Z did with Tidal all the way back like quite a few years ago at this point. I think you're going to have a lot of artists and a lot of kind of a think tank going on to really build up a streaming service and also bolster that streaming service if you want to make it a thing. Whether it is more artist-centric, whether it does give you more premiums, if you want to keep the streaming service, you're going to have to really push it forward, especially with your artists, your kind of company holders, the ones that put money into the company. You're really going to have to bolster that service up to make it appetizing and interesting for the consumer base, because Spotify and Apple Music have had a chokehold on the industry for quite a long time. And for to get that chokehold off of them is going to take a lot of heavy lifting. So if you want to push for an alternative streaming service, I am personally all for it, but we have to have kind of a happy medium there too. So that way, if we want everyone to grow, we need to have this nice kind of happy medium. So that way, streaming services get paid, but artists get paid. Honestly, artists should be getting paid more than the streaming services, but I know that's not how that works. What I have seen as well is that artists' websites are getting pushed forward. So maybe you're selling your album specifically through your album website, which I have seen quite a bit of. I know that Yeats 2093 Part 3 did sell on the artist website. If I'm not mistaken, the Childish Gambino album, 5/19/20, I'm not sure what it was called, but that was pushed onto the website first. So a lot of people may kind of bring it back to their kind of solo area, so that way they get a lot more of the splits. I can see that happening. However, as a general consumer, you want to make the actual kind of destination to get to your music as short as possible. You don't want people clicking multiple links. You don't want people putting in a bunch of information. You want to make sure it's instant gratification and instant access to the music. So I don't really know how you get those kind of things to work out, but I have seen that possibility show up there as well. So what's the number one kind of fix to all of this? As I'm kind of stating a couple times, it really is all about the big conglomerate of Spotify and Apple Music to really give more premiums and more splits to their artists. To give the bigger kind of splits for the music and for the artists that make your platform as profitable as it is. There are billion-dollar industries. I know it's like talking to a wall, but there is definitely a place where you can have that happy medium. Now, greed obviously plays a part into it. And again, you may have to see the artist kind of push for either an alternative streaming service, or I could possibly see artists pulling off things off streaming, pull off discographies, pull off artists off streaming in order to cause a point. Well, it may have to come to that point. Honestly, I can see a day where multiple artists really just band together and take all their stuff off streaming. It may be a risky move, but if it's getting to a point where you're seeing premiums go up by like $2 or $3, if this goes up to $15.99, you still see these splits, I think there's still a big problem. So that's kind of just the general discussion I wanted to have when it comes to the interesting discussion that's going on about the streaming services now. It may have been a scattershot of talking points and it may not have been fully coherent, but just an overall just interesting conversation I wanted to have. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for giving your time to watch my video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm posting videos as common as I can, and I will talk to you again very soon.